represent. Thank you. Start again. I'm Todd Barther. I'm the manufacturing representative on the State Building Code Council. This is the building code and the existing building code technical advisory group for May 25th, 2022. Let's start with, I believe, a roll call of existing members, please.
Can we do it the same way Micah is doing with the residential code? I'll go with the names and if the technical advisory group members can introduce themselves.
I like it. I think that's a great idea.
Todd Beruter.
So greetings, as I mentioned, I'm the manufacturing representative, but in this role on this tag, I'm the chair. So I've vacated the manufacturing role on the tag.
Roger Heringer.
Yes, I am here, and I am the structural engineering representative on the Building Code Council, and I am a structural engineer for DCI engineers. I am out of our Seattle office, and I have been with DCI for 33 years or something like that. So happy to be here and excited to be on the tag.
And before I go to Charles Calvano, I forgot to apologize in advance. I'm very well known for messing up names, so please be patient with me. Charles Calvano. Charles? No? Sue Kaufman?
Hi, Sue Kaufman. I'm with the city of Tacoma, and I'm fulfilling the building official role.
We have alternate here, Mark Sniffen.
Morning. I'm the building official for the city of Mount Vernon. Been kicking around this for a long time.
Sean Karlstrom.
Good morning. Yeah, my name is Sean Karlstrom. I represent Washington cities and counties on the building code tag, and I am the building official for the city of Shelton.
Corey Thomas.
Yes, I'm here. Corey Thomas. I work for the Renton Regional Fire Authority. I am the lead plans reviewer. I've been doing plans review for Renton for well over 30 years. And I represent the fire marshals on the building tag, and I'm also been on the fire tag for many cycles. So.
What do you mean? Is he coming?
Tom? Yeah. Did I say it right? Tom? Tom? Okay. Chris Seaman? No, Chris. Okay. Al Spalding?
Yes, good morning. Al Spalding with the State Department of Health Construction Review Program, representing healthcare facilities.
Mike Bart? Mike, are you here? No? Will Rodriguez? Will? Okay. Andrea Smith?
Hi, good morning. Andrea Smith with Building Industry Association of Washington.
Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, sorry, Bill. Sorry, Bill, I don't want to try your last name. Maybach?
Maybush.
Maybush. Ah, damn it. I knew it.
Close enough. Good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Maybush. I am with the Walsh Group. We're a commercial general contractor in the Seattle region. And this is my first meeting, and I'm assigned to the technical advisory group and representing commercial general contractor.
We have a quorum.
Outstanding. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we're still on agenda item number 1. If there is anyone else that would like to be recognized from the public, please feel free to do so now.
Marvin Prince, Bayview Ready Mix, Grays Harbor, and Pacific counties.
Thank you.
Matthew Hink with Cal Portland Company, and also the president of Washington Aggregates and Concrete Association.
Mike Ennis here on behalf of the Association of Washington Business.
Welcome.
Max Patel, Director of Sustainability with the American Institute of Steel Construction.
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington, AGC.
Bruce Chatton, Director for the Washington Aggregates and Concrete Association.
Adam Hutchinson, Executive Director of the Northwest Concrete Masonry Association.
This is Tian Peng with the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, Shoreline, Washington.
This is Webley Bowles with New Buildings Institute.
Good morning, Karina Allen with Washington Geological Survey, Department of Natural Resources.
There, this is Scott Newman with KPFF Consulting Engineers.
Carrie Sutton with the American Concrete Institute.
This is Jessica Koski with the Blue Green Alliance.
Mark Struley on behalf of the Northwest District Council of Ironworkers.
Jay Heinmarsh with Miller Hall Partnership here in Seattle.
Darcy Nonamaker with Washington Environmental Council and Washington Conservation Voters.
Hannah Waterstrat from the State Efficiency and Environmental Performance Office at the Washington Department of Commerce.
This is Pat Jablonski from Newport Steel.
Joe Kendo from the Washington State Labor Council.
Representative Larry Hoff from the State House of Representatives.
Linda Wilson.
Go ahead.
Linda Wilson, Washington State Senator.
Hi, Andy Taylor with, I'm chair of the Building Code Committee for American Concrete Institute for the code ACI 318.
Don Davies, president of Magnus and Clemensic Associates, structural engineers.
Lauren Bowling with the Ironworkers, Local 29.
Megan Lewis with the Carbon Leadership Forum.
Megan Kalsman with the Carbon Leadership Forum as well.
Micah Chappelle, City of Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, Technical Co-Development Manager. I also represent the building officials on the State Building Code Council.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you, everyone. That's very helpful to get a better understanding who's in the room and who's participating today. So with that, let's move to agenda item 2, which is review and approve the agenda. Before we hear a motion to approve, I want to say this is a technical advisory group. So this is the stakeholder level. We have to take action, and the action is a recommendation of today is of International Building Code and potentially international existing building code proposals to the for Washington amendments to the 2021 codes. We're in the group 2 of the cycle, and so our intent here is to while we have voting seats on this tag, our goal is to make sure everyone has a voice here and we conduct a fair process. So everyone is welcome to join and to speak. Please, we'll use Robert rules, and please use the raise hand features within Zoom. I asked that this isn't testimony. There's an opportunity to testify both to the BFP, the Building Fire Plumbing Tag, which is an official committee, standing committee of the council, and another chance for hearing if proposals that do make it all the way to the building code count or to the state building code council. So again, we'll conduct this as an open meeting. All stakeholders are welcome and encouraged. Today we're going to first review the code of proposals that we tabled 2 weeks ago. So we're still in the IBC code proposals, and I see a list of 5 here that I recall we tabled. And then if we have time, we have 3 hours scheduled today, we will agenda item 5 would be to move into the existing building code, but I suspect we'll have a pretty lengthy discussion on at least 2 of these proposals today. So with that, can we please hear a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Roger.
This is Al, I'll second.
Thank you. So it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay, so approved. Agenda item 3, review and approve the February 9th and May 11th minutes.
We don't have the minutes yet. We're still working on April 22nd meeting because of the issues we had. So we'll catch up.
No worries. Thank you. Understood.
I hope by the end of the technical advisory group meetings, we'll catch up.
Okay. No, thank you. We understand. Okay, so we'll defer that. So moving into then agenda item 4, we will just as a background for those of you that weren't with us 2 weeks ago, these items were tabled either because we wanted to make sure the proponent could be with us to present, or because we felt there was a need for more lengthy stakeholder engagement. So Stein, do you want to?
Yes, sir. Just give me a sec.
Thank you.
I wanna come on. Sorry about that. I'm not sure if you see Washington State Building Code review and adoption process on your screen.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so I want to start with this because I received several comments, and I will share the comments with you, and they are posted on the website. But I think many folks have the wrong impression that that's a done deal. Well, it's not. This is the technical advisory group, and as Todd said, the technical advisory group will end up with a recommendation, whatever the recommendation is. And it gets to, it will move to the BFP Standing Committee. And these proposals will be discussed again at the BFP Standing Committee. So this is the second option for comments and testimony. And then it will get to the council. So the council needs to approve the proposals that will be part of the initial submittal, how we call it, the CR 102. And then this initial submittal is filed with the code revisor's office, and we'll have about 2 months a comment period. So we will collect written comments, and then we will have at least 2 public hearings. So this is the other option for you folks to testify. So there are 4 different events or venues that folks will testify. So again, it's a first step of the process. It's not a done deal. Okay. And then we will start with the first proposal. I can hear my voice. Yeah.
Okay, I think I muted.
Okay, so the first proposal is 28. Scott Newman, if he's here, or
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Stoyan, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present on this proposal. Are you sharing the screen? Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
I found it. Yeah, I'm very pleased to be able to present this proposal because this proposal represents a big success of the State Building Code Council. What the proposal does is it removes a amplification for design forces for concrete shear walls. The State Building Code Council added this to the building code based on state-of-the-art research a few years ago and led the nation in requiring amplified forces. The reason I'm proposing to remove it now is because the national design building codes have caught up, and a similar requirement to amplify forces, excuse me, is included in the ACI 318 building code now. It's slightly different. The intent is the same. So to avoid confusion, I'm proposing to remove this one line and 3 words that we see on the screen right now. This proposal has been reviewed by a number of engineers. I saw a couple of them are also here today, but it's been being proposed by design engineers as well as code officials. We're in agreement that this line should be removed.
Just to clarify, the language you see here, section 1613.4, there was a little confusion at the previous meeting. This is a state amendment. It's not in the model code. It was adopted in 2018 IBC.
That's right. So what was previously added as a state amendment is being proposed to be removed. That's right. So this isn't a change to the international code, the standard code. This is just a change to the Washington State Building Code amendments.
Thank you, Scott. And we discussed this, 2 weeks ago. Do all members understand what Stoyan and Scott are referring to, that the ASC 7 code is written into this Washington Amendment, Chapter 16? Okay. Okay, well, maybe we can start by hearing a motion to recommend or if which can get us into deliberation, and then we can make additional amendments if anyone feels there need to be changes. It's kind of general rule across all of these. So do we have a motion to recommend moving this forward to the BFP committee?
Yeah, this is Roger. I'll make a motion that we approve this and move this along to the next committee as written.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a second?
This is Sue. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Sue. So now we're moving into deliberation. And again, this is an open meeting, so we're not closing it down to public comment. So there's a deliberation for everyone, both members of the TAG and the general public or proponents. Anyone have any discussion or comments? Please use the raise hand feature. Okay. Okay, Roger, please.
Yeah, I will comment as a practicing engineer. I think if you go down to the very end of section 5, Stoyan, if you can page down, I think the critical comment as far as I'm concerned as a practicing engineer is that the second sentence of that larger paragraph, without removal of the section, it is unclear the factors referenced by the amendment and the factor reference in the standard should be used together. So the factor is you're basically increasing the shear demand on a wall by 2.5% when you actually, or 2.5 times when you're actually designing a shear wall, and without removing it, there could be engineers and or code officials who would enforce that you have to apply the 2.5 times twice. So it would be a factor of 5 or maybe even 5.25 if I do the math right. So Very clearly, it is not intended that that factor of 2.5 get applied twice. So I think that from my perspective as a practicing engineer, this makes complete sense.
Thank you, Roger. Andrew, please.
I just wanted to also verify that as chair of the ACI 318 committee currently, that it was definitely our intention to insert the modification that's shown here on the screen for the same reasons that the state adopted the amendment originally. So we have essentially codified what the amendment was, so it should be removed from the state, the current state amendment.
Thank you. Good comment. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, the motion is to then recommend as what I'm hearing is as written, as proposed. Let's try a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. Any okay. Then that passes. We will for recommendation. Thank you. Okay, second proposal for today, please.
Number 31. This is for tsunami loads. This is another one that is a state amendment.
Yep. Thank you. So I'm also close to this. A little background for everyone. There was an ad hoc tsunami tag for a while. A very qualified group of stakeholders that I see some on the line right now. So I see John Sue. Would you like to speak to this, or Kale Ash?
Yeah, good morning, Todd. I can speak to this one, and then maybe John can fill in any additional background.
Thank you.
So I'm Kale Ash. I'm a structural engineer and principal at Dagenkolb Engineers. As Todd briefly noted, we were part of a ad hoc technical advisory group that formed, I think about a year and a half ago, late 2020, to look at bringing in some of the Washington Department of Natural Resource developed tsunami hazard maps into the Washington State Building Code. Those changes were made to the adoption of the 2018 IBC through emergency rulemaking, as the process, or as I understand the process. And the code change proposal here essentially extends the use of the Department of Natural Resources maps into the adoption of the 2021 IBC. The other main change that's proposed here is an early adoption of ASCE 722, Chapter codes for buildings, and Chapter 6 deals with tsunami loads and effects. That chapter was just published in the ASC 716 version, and there's been quite a few technical updates incorporated into the 722 version. So the code change proposal does two main things. Adopts the Washington Department of Natural Resources tsunami hazard maps for design purposes, and represents an early adoption of the technical provisions in ASC 722 for the state.
Thank you, Kale. And just a little more background. So that ad hoc tsunami tag, then we dissolved it after the temporary and permanent rulemaking was complete in the 2018 code. And so now this is a proposal for the 2021 code. Kale or John or Karina, can you advise us, this is meant to replace what is written in now. It's not edits to that current amendment, right? This is intended to completely replace the section that's in the 2018, right? There are changes to this, right? Or is it just the update of the maps?
Yeah, John, can you step in? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the intent is to, if I recall how Kelly, you guys put it together, I think it is to replace the provisions that were there already, because we essentially are rewriting several of them because of the adoption or the pre-adoption of ASC 722 provisions. The other thing is, just want to clarify, is that the Washington State DNR maps have been updated since the emergency rule and other rulemaking, permanent rulemaking was done. And so we are adopting basically the latest maps that DNR has at this point in time. And I think that list, so if you were to compare the list of maps, which is a little bit further down in the, there we go, that, yeah. It's a longer list. And essentially, at the time, back in the old tag, tsunami tag time, there were only, there were fewer maps available. Now DNR has extended it. The DNR maps cover pretty much everything in the state that's subject to tsunamis, except Point Roberts, I believe, is the only one that's kind of outstanding there. And I'll stop there, let Karina add anything if she wants.
John.
You covered it very well. Thank you, John.
Just to clarify, so John, the proposal is to strike whatever we currently have in section 1615 and add this, is it?
I think that will work. I didn't think about that in advance of this meeting, sorry. We can certainly, I would say so for now, and then if we look at it and find out differently, we can certainly bring it back to the tag.
Well, it's just a formality for the staff. We need to know how to proceed if we get to the filing. So currently it's introduced as a brand new proposal, but if you can send a document with underline and strike out, then we can.
Certainly.
Stoyan, and so for everyone's sake here, what we're talking about is this tag. The first step in group one was to go through and review the existing Washington State amendments in the 2018 code and what should carry over, what should be overwritten by the 2021 code, either the model code, or in this case, it would be overwritten by this proposal. So do we need to take action on the master spreadsheet? Does the tag need to take action to strike that?
No. So my point here is, when we are introducing a proposal, we need to show the changes, right? So if we are deleting something, it needs to be shown with strikeout. If it's a new language, part of an existing proposal, it needs to be underlined. And this proposal was submitted, no strikeout, no underline. So we consider this a brand new proposal that will replace the existing language. If this is the intent, okay, we will follow that. We will show the strikeout in WAC, the entire section, and we will show the new one. But if the intent was to keep the existing language and modify just parts of it, then we need to see this as underline and strikeout.
I think the question here is, my interpretation of this is a complete section.
That's the way it was written. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good enough.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess we haven't done a motion yet. Can we hear a motion to recommend this proposal to the BFB committee, please?
This is Chris. I'll move to recommend it to the BFP.
Thank you, Chris. Can we hear a second, please?
This is Sue, I'll second.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, any other deliberation, proposed amendments? I'll say that this has been a very thorough public process. I think it's just a model of how the state should do this in collaboration with other agencies and of course stakeholders. So strong support for this. Roger, please.
Yeah, I'm just I'm wanting. I mean, in general, I understand, agree with it. I just want to make sure I understand exactly what section of which code we're taking out and what section of which code we're adding in. And that can be handled later if that's the right, if that's if the tag is going to move it forward and the exact language gets worked out before it gets the final approval, that's fine. So I'm just asking for more clarity just on the code process. I mean, the document itself and the information seems.
Sure. Go ahead.
Do you see the WAC 5150, 1615 on the screen?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is what we currently have. This is what it's codified, okay? And the typical way is if this existing amendment, which this is a state amendment, this is a state addition to the code. If this existing amendment is modified, we need to show the modifications with strikeout and underline. However, the proponent is proposing we strike out everything that is adopted here, and we replace it with that.
Okay.
And Roger, I think maybe what you're also asking is this, like the last proposal, this is obviously modifying and amending a section of AEC 7 and with references to Washington specific tsunami maps from the Department of Natural Resources. So this is another case where AEC 7 is being pulled in and amended within Chapter 16.
And even ASC 716 is being amended by ASC 722 language. Is that what I heard?
John, can I defer to you to speak to this?
I'll let Kale.
Yeah, so we're not amending ASC 716. We are adopting ASC 722 Chapter 6 with modifications to point to the Washington Tsunami Design Zone maps. That's the intent of the proposal, yes.
Okay.
Better said, thank you. Okay, anyone else? If not, again, the motion is recommend as proposed to the VFP committee. Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay. That recommendation passes. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, just give me a second.
Roger, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Todd, I have a request just as you're asking for voice votes.
Yes.
If you can wait just a minute, I know people are needing to unmute themselves and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
The next one is 94. Section 1603. This is a new section. So for this one, we don't have currently anything. It's a new proposal, section 1603.10.
Okay, do we have the proponent? Is that what we?
The proponent is Eric.
Oh, right. Okay, we tabled to wait for Eric. I see Eric on here. Eric, would you like to speak to your proposal?
Yes, thanks. So this is a proposal to add a section. This was proposed under group 1 and then withdrawn and asked, as I was asked to propose under group 2. So the tag has seen this language, a while back. I was asked to move it to this section, which documents the requirements on the drawing. So again, this is adding language to require permit drawing sets to include information about the non-structural components, and so specifically indicate if the structural support and anchoring document is part of that design submittal, or if it's going to be deferred to a contractor shop drawing submittal. So that's kind of the first part. And then specifically the drawings, whether these are mechanical, electrical, plumbing, architectural drawings, would need to indicate all components that they're interpreting for ASCE E7, all non-structural components that are required to have an IP of 1.5, and anything that's required to be a designated seismic system. So this is trying to, allow code officials to at least be able to review how ASCE 7 is being interpreted on the project. We're seeing a huge variation between different jurisdictions in the state as to how these sections are being enforced for non-structural components. So typical examples of non-structural components would be things like mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, things like generators and switch gear, and then other things like non-structural components could be things like stairs and other components that aren't directly part of the structural system. So there are requirements in ASCE 7 for having these seismic tie-down calculations and anchoring documentation, and different, whether it has an IP of 1 or 1.5 as part of a life safety system, or it could be part of a natural gas system, for example, and be a natural gas boiler and have an IP of 1. Some jurisdictions are interpreting things like stairwell and elevator pressurization fans need to be active. They need to be active mechanical equipment, and they're part of the designated seismic system, and they need to be operational post a seismic event. And so by having this documentation, in the plan set, it allows the code official to comment on whether these components, are required to have this level of calculation and documentation, and to comment on that early. So some jurisdictions for pressurization fans are requiring specific shape table tested fans, for example. And so again, a high variety around the state of what is being required for each jurisdiction. So this is kind of a first step in getting some documentation into the plan sets, and so that we can improve enforcement and around these code sections.
Okay, thank you, Eric. We did discuss this at our last meeting. So is there anyone who'd like to summarize our previous discussion or offer new comments? Chris, please.
Yeah, probably just a little clarification maybe for me might help. What do we mean by active? Or using that language, and maybe that's an ASCE term that I'm a fire protection engineer, so I'm not the structural person. So if that's a ASCE term that
again
means something to others.
So I'm not a structural engineer either. That is the language that's used in the ASCE 7 and talked about in the ASCE 7 commentary. So active, like a fire pump, for example, would need to be active. If you're wanting the fire pump to be active after a seismic event, then it requires a specific type of seismic tie down calculations. If so some jurisdictions, for example, are interpreting that an earthquake may cause a fire and therefore they may need the fire pump active. Other jurisdictions are saying that, an earthquake doesn't necessarily cause a fire in a building and people just need to be able to egress out of the building. So again, high variety between jurisdictions as to what types of equipment are being required for this based on what event and how that jurisdiction is interpreting the code.
Okay, talking out loud amongst my other jurisdiction people and design professionals. I mean, I'm just the dumb fire guy, right? So structural is not my thing, but my understanding is that buildings except for risk category 4 buildings are not meant to necessarily be occupied right after an earthquake. Like risk category 4 buildings, you're supposed to be able to still use the building and go right back in. But everything else, it's like, don't fall down much at all. And then I can come back in is kind of how I understand it. So is this just an I don't know that this helps me as an AHJ if I was I don't think it helps narrow down how an AHJ should interpret the section. I think you're still going to get that variation, which doesn't sound like that's helpful. I guess maybe it would help you know whether they're going to require a bunch of stuff up ahead, which is, I suppose, surprises are the bad news that you don't want as a developer. So
correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I understand the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The intent of this proposal is just to not interpret ASCE 7 and what's required. It's that this is required to be documented in the plan set so that the code official can review it early on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Then Roger, please.
Yeah, as a structural engineer, when you reference permit drawings, are you suggesting that all of this information is meant to be on the structural permit drawings?
I think that's going to be vary by AHJ and how they would want to enforce it. It could be on the architectural drawings as a code basis. It could be divvied out to architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, so forth.
Okay.
This is a building code section. As you know, the mechanical code generally references chapter 16 as well as the plumbing code. NFPA 70 has its own references. So there aren't very great pointers to a single spot, but yeah, this is meant to be fairly generic and allow the architect, for example, to put a matrix in their code basis to defer this to the electrical plan set or whatnot. But if we want to get more specific, I can, do that also.
My concern as a structural engineer is I do not, I'm stamping those drawings and I do not have any control over the mechanical systems or the fire sprinkler systems. So I think that it would almost be being asked to stamp something that I have not designed, which I can't do. So you're starting to cross a line there. I mean, I do.
Yeah, I think the way I would handle that as a structural engineer is I'd have a code basis note saying these calculations are not part of our package,
Yeah.
and they are the responsibility of someone else, right?
Yeah.
And the other big thing that's happening is mechanical engineers are putting generic details, because code officials are asking them, putting generic details on how equipment is going to be attached or seismically tied down onto their drawings. They're stamping those. They can't stamp that legally because they're not a structural engineer. But they could have a matrix deferring that scope and defining. What we do as an engineering firm is we have a matrix on our drawings that shows each component and defers these calculations once the final equipment is selected to somebody else. But we've clearly denoted that this piece of equipment has an IP of 1.0. This piece of equipment has an IP of 1.5. This is a designated seismic system, requires a shape table test. We put all those code requirements into our plan set and then defer the structural tie down calculations to a structural engineer that's qualified to do that.
And that is a deferred, I mean, that's not part of my normal structural engineering services. I am sometimes hired by a mechanical engineer to do those calculations.
Correct. So that's what I would want
Yeah.
you to indicate on your drawings, is that what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for.
My only outstanding question is and I'm thinking about this out loud, but we are not changing the requirements at all. The requirements are there that some piece of equipment has to be designed for an IP of 1.5. So all we're asking to do is we are really clarifying that that information needs to be on the permit drawings so that it is clear that somebody needs to design it. Is that a good summary?
Correct. You're clearly denoting who is responsible for doing that scope and what equipment falls into that scope. One of my challenges here is that ASCE 7 is one of the standards that I don't think is available free online. There's a lot of MEP folks out there that don't understand ASCE 7. So the more we can provide pointers in the building code, which is available free online to anyone, to go look at these sections, the better off we are.
Okay, I guess my comment to that is if you're designing a mechanical system for a commercial building, which is this section, then I would think as kind of a minimum that you are able to go into ASCE 7 and you know, and it's kind of, that's what you're meant. It's assumed that you're able to do that, but as a professional who is designing a mechanical system, but I'm all for clarifying it. So that's
agreed. I assume that you should be able to do that, but again, a high variety of about how ASCE 7 is being enforced.
Sure.
And what's being required on an NHAJ by, you know, every jurisdiction is enforcing this. Some are requiring these as design submittals, some are requiring them as shop drawing submittals, some are actively walking the job site and verifying every support that's shown on a shop drawing submittal. Others are not, you know, so high variety of how this is being enforced. But yeah, every fan that's more than 20 pounds that's hanging above someone's head needs a seismic tie down calc for ASCE 7 in Western Washington. So,
and Eric, I guess there's a bunch of hands raised, so I don't want to take all the time here, but I guess I would like to maybe, if we are clarifying, I would want to clarify both for the designers, but also for the building officials, and the fact that that could be a deferred submittal. And you know, there are different building officials that we've had challenges with some building officials not wanting to go down the path of a deferred submittal and saying everything's got to be submitted right away early, and that creates challenges. So that's a thought. So, and then
yeah, so for a lot of jurisdictions where they require us to list deferred submittals in the plan sets, so we actively list those, you know, on our cover sheet. These are deferred submittals. It's really hard to do these types of calculations before the final piece of equipment is selected, since there's a high variety and, you know, the weights of the final equipment selected. We have to typically bid with multiple manufacturers. So yeah, there's a high variety in the you know, the weights, the size, and where the center of gravity is, and doing all these calculations during design, and then having to change them later around the final equipment selection is something that we're up against. So
yeah. Okay, I'm done, Todd.
Yeah, thank you. Scott, we jumped over you.
Thank you. So I'd like to speak out in favor of identifying the designated structural systems on the construction documents. I'd like to speak out in opposition of the location of where this requirement ended up. And it sounds like there's been some discussion about where this should live, what section of the code this should modify that I haven't been aware of. But adding this as part of section 1603, 1603 states that it provides a list of design loads and other information pertinent to the structural design. And I don't think it's a stretch by locating this change in section 16 of the IBC that code officials could understand this to be a requirement on the structural drawings. And my concern is that we're requiring a lot of the structural design, or sorry, a lot of the non-structural design, the plumbing, the mechanical design, to be shown on the structural drawings. And that's something that, as Roger said, a structural engineer just couldn't stamp because it's outside their area of practice. I think locating this requirement in the structural section of the code specifically is confusing. And I think it would be better located in a more general section that's more applicable to the overall set of construction documents. I was going to suggest section 107. It sounds like that's maybe where it started out before it was moved to the structural section.
No, it was somewhere else in 16, but we moved it to this. But yeah, there hasn't been discussion of moving it outside of chapter 16. So that's a new thing we can talk about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, section 16 is really intended to be a section for the structural systems in the building, generally the main building systems.
Well, it says
Although
construction documents indicated on the construction documents. So it's a very broad term.
Well, that's section 1603. Section 16 is structural. So section 1603, the intent is to refer to the structural documents. Sorry, I think I got muted there. The intent is to refer to the structural construction documents. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Scott. Can we move to Mark, Eric?
Hi, Monday. Hi, Monday.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just going to mirror that same thought of if this is the right section for this. I do agree. I love having that information, and I do understand that it could be a deferred submittal, but I really think it belongs in 107, maybe 107.3.4, somewhere in there, because that's where I guess two things. One is that's the administrative portion of it. So if someone didn't like it, I think they could probably change it. And also that's kind of like where anybody who's doing plan review or even permit techs would get that information to look for this information when they bring these plans in. They won't go to 16, I can guarantee you that, because they run from that section. So as far as a building official goes, I would recommend that we move that to 107.3.4, I think might be a good spot, or to chapter 107, someplace that makes sense in there. And that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's hold that thought and maybe propose it as an amendment if you want after we make a motion. John, please.
Todd, one thing I'm just commenting on that. So I did look up the reference in the mechanical code, and the mechanical code just refers to the entire building code. So I think anywhere it doesn't refer to chapter 16. So I'm fine with moving it to chapter 1 if we think that's where it should be. So.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Let's hear from John and then Chris.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not going to talk about the merits of where it ought to be located or the merits of the proposal itself. I do have just a couple technical comments on the wording here.
One is that the section number, if it stays here, should be 1603.1.10. Looks like one part got missed there. Thank you, Stoyan. And then I would change permit drawing shall indicate in the first sentence there. So just some technical wording. And the other thing, Eric, do we need to say that it's deferred to a contractor? I mean, it could be deferred to someone else, right? So my suggestion would be part of the design submittal or a deferred submittal, period. Get rid of everything from to a contractor through drawing, structural shop drawings, just a deferred submittal, which is the general term in chapter 1.
Agreed that we could get rid of to a contractor structural shop drawing. Yeah.
Yep.
Strike through those words.
So yeah.
Sorry.
And so it would go to where it says design submittal, the second line. You would go design submittal. You would go after that. You would insert a, or sorry, after or you would say insert a, and then delete the words to from to all the way through drawing on the next line. Yeah.
Agree with that simplification. Thank you.
That's my comment.
Thank you, John. By the way, I think I don't need to be so formal to move this into a motion to deliberate. Obviously, we're deliberating and amending right now. So let's hear from Chris.
Just some thoughts. So what I understand the problem to be is jurisdictions having widely different interpretations of a requirement. That's what I understand the problem to be. I don't know that this amendment does not solve that problem of varying interpretations from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I know that we all have our own flavor and on interpretations, but if it's that widely varied, this doesn't address that. That lets you know sooner, I suppose, in the design phase that that's how they think about something. Could we either instead of or in addition to this recommend that what is it, SEAW is the local engineering group? Would a white paper from that group be helpful in jurisdictions understanding the concepts? Because I think a lot of the times when we make interpretations that are different from other jurisdictions, it's because those jurisdictions don't have necessarily the same perspective because of the level of folks they have on staff. You know, if they don't have an SE on staff, for example, they might make an interpretation that's much more conservative and different than one that would have an SE on staff. Does that make any sense? Like, I just don't see this as solving your issue, which is sometimes I get asked to do something and sometimes I don't.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of two issues. One is there's a lot of folks that aren't documenting this at all, and it's not being enforced, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think
there is an SEA white paper from 2011, which talks about, so this is a white paper 7-2011 that does talk about how to interpret the, it does provide some examples of where IP of 1.5 should be applied, and it does provide some examples of it doesn't really specifically speak to the designated seismic very well. So yeah, there's definitely different interpretations from different AHJs on how they're applying this around the state. So that's a much bigger topic to try to handle.
Okay, because the way I see it and the way I understand it is, I won't see a building that needs this documented very often. It'll be fire stations, hospitals.
Now, any facility that has natural gas piping would have to document how that natural gas piping is being tied down. Any building that has a non-structural stairway would have to document this.
Okay.
If you want that stairway to be available after a seismic event.
Ken, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So Chris, I just kind of jump onto that a little bit. So I was looking at NFPA 13. This is just another fire guy here. With regards to, seismic design of non-structural components is governed by we all just talked about the ASCE 7, and it does talk about the sprinkler piping being classified as designated seismic system, and it already clarifies that the importance factor is 1.5. And I understand where you were going in the chapter 16 part about the survivability after the earthquake and only in the critical buildings. But my view on this is that for the sprinkler stuff, the 1.5 should already be that our sprinkler reviewers are already looking for because of 13. So that's just
and they're not engineers, and they're never designed by an engineer. Those
they're not.
bracing components are prescriptive per the standard.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just all I was just trying to make the point is that it's already, I see it already being required in 13. That's why I just didn't know that at least the importance factor part of it is.
Yes, I would agree. Sprinkler is much better covered under NFPA 13 than the specific bracing requirements there. Electrical, egress lighting, other things like that, how that's being met is not as well covered under an FPA 70 and definitely being interpreted differently. Most generators are seismic shake table tested or rated, but you can buy generators that don't meet those types of qualifications. So yeah, there's a high variability in what folks are documenting on electrical plan set out there.
Andrew, please.
Yeah, just real briefly, returning to the word active in item 2. I'm not sure what that means in this context, but I do think that if it's meant to express the idea that something needs to survive or remain functional, that's covered later in the sentence by the phrase "to be operational following seismic event." When I look at that, I think of, well, is it currently active before the event, or is it somehow not active or dormant? I think the word active could be struck, and the sentence would actually be clearer because there wouldn't be ambiguity about what active means in the first part of the sentence. So just a comment.
Eric, any thoughts on that?
I'm just looking at the actual, again, I'm not an ASCE 7 expert, so if there's someone that the term active, I think, comes mostly out of the commentary is what I'm seeing. I'm trying to review the ASCE 7 language here. So I can, circulate that information for folks, but so it says this section addresses the qualifications of active designated seismic equipment, its supports and attachments with the goals of improving site survivability and achieving a high level of confidence when a facility will be functional after a design earthquake. So that, I guess that portion there is for this describing facilities that do need to be functional. So examples of active designated seismic equipment include mechanical or electrical, power supply, distribution equipment, mechanical equipment, fire pump equipment, and uninterruptible power supplies for hospitals. So I was just taking the language out of the ASCE 7 commentary. If there's a better way to word that, then we can, we can update it to that. So, but yes, it's systems that need to be active post earthquake event, is my understanding.
Okay, well, it's more of an editorial thing. I just was a little thrown by the word active in this context, but I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
Eric, can you tell me what section you were reading from out of the commentary?
I'm reading from the 2010 commentary, which is C 13.2.2.
Thank you,
on
Andrew.
page 437 of that commentary.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from Kaiki now, please.
Hi, this is Kaiki. I'm the principal engineer here at SDCI. Just want to echo on what Chris mentioned earlier. I think the issue at hand really is, as noticed, already discussed, that there may be this inconsistency in how ASJ interpret this criteria. And I think it stems from the fact that the definition of designated seismic system refers back to ASCE 7, which is something that designed with an IP equals to 1.5. And when you go to ASCE section 13.1.3, item 1, I think that sentence is the one that is mostly open for interpretation. I think mostly for item 3, we understand for risk category 4, no one argues that things that go into a risk category 4 building requires to survive after an earthquake. But in item 1, the sentence read, the components is required to function for life safety purposes after an earthquake. And I think that sentence is probably one of the most open for interpretation sentence that I think that was what we're trying to resolve here. Now, I'm neither support of or against this proposal. I think the message here is some sort of coordination is required by the design team while they're designing a building that is other than risk category 4, and whose responsibility in showing that list of equipment that is considered active. And by the way, if you look online and look at other commentary, I think the term active also refers to some sort of, and I'm no mechanical engineer, so I think it refers to how fast the motor spins and things like that. And so, and by the way, OSHPD has a very detailed list of what they consider designated seismic system. So there's some certainly good reference out there. All in all, I'm just trying to note that I think we're trying to get to the issue where these items should be identified during design so that during inspection, especially during special inspection process, the proper equipments can be identified and installed with a proper certification. I think Eric might agree to that I think people may not be actually buying the right equipment and knowing that the lead time that involved to purchase some of those equipment, sometimes those may be overlooked. Again, I know my comment is not resolving the issue at hand about the proposal. I am supportive, I guess, in a way, the idea. So whether it's located in chapter 1 or chapter 16, I think that certainly can be further discussed. But I think I do want to acknowledge the fact that further clarification may be helpful, because I think if we're talking about, I think we all often talk about the fact that we want to build a resilient city or state, having the proper equipment that actually performs during the seismic event is pretty important from that regard. So I just want to note those comments for consideration. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Kaki. So on that note, I think we're hearing neutral or general support for this, but I'll ask before we address location. Is there anyone who's opposed to this, that this shouldn't move forward before we potentially modify section? Okay. Well, with that, Eric, oh, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'd like to see it move to a new location before supporting it.
Okay. Eric, you seemed.
Yeah, chapter 1's fine with me if that's the best place for it. And I would agree with Kaiki's comments that, yeah, it is confusing, and the ASCE 7 commentary is not clear on which components. This is just a first step to try to get documentation in the plan set. I think there is more work to be done long term on education around non-structural components and getting more uniform enforcement of how this is treated throughout the strait. But this is a first step. So.
Thank you, Eric. Roger?
Yeah, I'm still stuck on first off, I agree with Scott. I probably wouldn't support it in chapter 16, being a structural engineer. I like in chapter 1. I'm still going through the wording of number 2 there, and I don't see that by taking the active out that reduces or negatively affects that sentence. It's very clear that mechanical, fire, electrical, and other non-structural components that are meant to be operational, you're very specifically saying that. Whether there's some other, whether they're defined as active or not elsewhere in the code, you're saying here that all of those pieces that are supposed to be operational following a seismic event need to be identified. So
I would agree active can be removed and make it more generic. That's fine.
Okay, should we make that change right now? Anyone opposed to that? Stoyan, is that you or Ned?
It's me.
Okay.
So active, you want all deleted, right?
Is that the proposal? Remove all active from those 4 references?
That was my understanding of the discussion.
Okay. Okay. Should we find a home for this in chapter 1? Does anyone have a specific proposal where this belongs?
Yes.
Somewhere in 107 construction documents.
Is that something we need to decide right now if we say chapter 107 and give staff time to find the home, or should we be specific here?
I think the section that was discussed earlier was 107.3.4, and maybe even add a new section 107.3.4.1 deferred submittals.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Roger?
Yeah, I'm looking at 107 and making sure I'm on the right 2000. I'm in the 2018, and I'm assuming it hasn't changed significantly. 107.2 is construction documents, and it kind of is defining construction documents. 107.3 is examination of documents, unless that's different in the 2021 IBC. And in this, I think we are defining, I feel like it fits better in 107.2. You're defining what needs to be included in the construction documents.
Dorian has it up here.
So that's my comment.
Yeah, 107.2, I would agree.
Yeah. Bill, please.
Just a question. When you say all equipment, to me, that sounds like a broad statement. That means every piece of functional equipment in a particular building, or are we only talking about something that is required for fire life safety?
only the things in that statement that are required to be a designated seismic system. Is the way the sentence read, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both, John.
I want to suggest actually Stoyan was there before 107.2.7. It's on the next page there. Maybe as a part of that or as a separate a subsection to that would be the appropriate place for this.
107.2.7.1.
Right, 107.2.7, yeah, 0.1. Yes, that would be the suggestion.
Okay, Scott.
Well, John, 107.2.7 is again a section specifically related to the structural documents. So
not
this
necessarily. I would disagree with that. Construction documents is not just structural.
Well, no, 107.2.7, the title of that section is structural information.
I know, but
the titles are not enforceable. It never says anything. It's
yeah. The titles are not enforceable, number one. Number two, again, this is structural information, right? It doesn't necessarily pin it to anybody.
Well, the language talks about non-structural systems.
Yeah.
It'd be a new section, 107.29, I guess. Or
Yeah, I was going to propose that. I mean, 107.2.9, it's a different requirement, so that will fit in, I think.
If we do that, can we make it neat and call it 0.8 and then move relocatable buildings to 0.9, or is that dangerous code etiquette for references?
It's possible, yeah.
Not important.
it's a small section, you'll find them.
Yeah, it's a small section. Yeah. We don't need to renumber 15 of those, it's just only one.
Okay.
I'm gonna offer my support to make it out not part of 2.7, and I understand John's defense that it is structural information, but I just know that could very easily get interpreted that it's supposed to be on the structural drawings. So I would like to keep it separate, and my preference is to make it 2.8 and make relocatable buildings 2.9, but so.
Thank you, Roger. John, is that digestible?
I don't object.
Thank you. Anyone else? Support or oppose? Okay. So going back to the proposal then, Stoyan, I guess we've landed on this as section 107.2.8, correct? Okay, fair enough. Okay. Are we in a good place? I guess I'll ask for a motion to recommend as modified to the BFP committee.
I'll make that motion to move it to the BFT committee as modified.
Thank you, Roger. We hear a second?
This is Al. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Al. Okay, any final deliberation?
All right, I got one more editorial comment.
Yes, please.
It probably should say construction documents and not permit drawings at the beginning, but
could we go back to the Word doc, Stoyan, please?
I don't know what is that.
Can you say that again, Eric?
Where the two instances where it says permit drawing, should it say construction documents?
Yeah, this is Roger. I think that it should, because that's what 107.2 is construction documents.
Okay.
And that's, there's, the next sentence has that also.
Is that agreeable to everyone? Okay, thank you. Okay, if we're ready. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay, then that passes as modified. Thank you. Are we now to the last two? Okay. Before we jump into these, maybe I'll recommend we just take 4 minutes or 5 minutes, if that's okay. Take a quick break, and then we'll come back at 11:25.
And just if you have time during the break, everything is posted on the website. I mean, we have proposals for, these two proposals, proponents submitted modifications, and we have 5 or 6 comments. So if you have time and you haven't looked it up yet, please take a look.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's add a minute. We're 11, we're at ease until 11:26. Thanks. Historian. Okay, thank you, everyone. We're back with the building code tag, and we're going to hear the next two proposals, the last two that we tabled for the IBC. We tabled these two to, in particular, to get more stakeholder engagement. We have, I believe Webley is the proponent and was able to present to us last week. But Webley, is there anything you'd like to say before we jump into these?
Would you like?
Let me, sorry to cut you off. This is the proposal that was submitted. I mean, the modified proposal. Do you want me to show the modified proposals or the original submittals?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't. You're right. Good point. So between these meetings, the proposal was modified. So yes, let's show the modified, please.
Okay, here it is.
Unless there's. And Webley, would Stoyan, do you want to speak to this first, or would you like the proponent to speak?
Well, the proponent can specify what was changed and all details associated with it.
Okay, Roger, do you have a?
Yes, Stoyan, can you just show on the website where that is located? I have not had a chance to look through the new.
So on the website, when you, it disappeared because we started the meeting, but when you click on see all events,
it's okay.
Yes, going to that point, can we change that feature that once we start a meeting that we lose the?
No, that's IT. We can't control that. It's
So let's walk people through them to define the calendar you're looking at. So see all events, right?
Yes, you need to click and see all events, because when the meeting starts, then it's no longer. It's a feature that we can't control. It's out of our above our pay grade, I would say.
I found it.
Okay.
So
sorry about that. I didn't think about this.
Okay, so with that, Webley, would you like to speak to the proposal and the modifications?
Yes. Would you like me to go through them back to back, or do one first and then the other?
I think we could do both of them together, since they've both been introduced, and then we can separate them out and talk about each. I do believe a lot of the discussion will be on both, right? So I think that's helpful, please.
Okay, great. So I also want to say I appreciate your time in taking the time to understand the topic and hear from the community. So thank you for doing that. So the code change proposals addresses the GHG emissions of the common construction materials that are used in large quantities, concrete and structural steel. and they support Washington's climate goals. So that's kind of the overarching thing here. The proposal requires that ready mixed concrete mixes. Wait, are you on steel? You're on steel first.
Which one do you want me
That's
to?
fine. No, I can do steel. Just want to make sure that we're looking at the same thing. So this,
No,
this,
it's, I think it's section, oh, yeah, sorry, yes,
Okay.
I'm on steel. Okay,
great.
sorry about that.
So this proposal has two main paths of compliance. I did reorganize this, so we have the definitions, and then the paths of compliance have been reorganized. So the first path is for 75% of a product's structural steel to meet specific global warming potential or GWP targets using environmental product declarations. The structural steel values are based on 175% of industry averages, and the rebar is based on the 75th percentile of US-based EPDs. So this, as I mentioned, if you scroll down a little bit, this option was, there you go, it was moved up. So the main thing that's changed here, track changes, looks like it's a new section, but it's not. Just wanted to change that for readability. The second option, which we think might be a little bit less popular in terms of use, functionality, allows for projects to comply by procuring steel from plants that either use on-site renewable energy or purchase off-site renewables or are enrolled in a US EPA Green Power Partner Program. Because steel is often dominated by the energy source, this option assumes that the GHG emission reduction is similar to what we're putting in the GWP requirements without that EPD documentation. So we've also included two exceptions to this proposal. Sorry to make you scroll around, but if you scroll back up, we have a couple of exclusions. One is that projects less than 50,000 square feet. This aligns with House Bill 1103. And projects where the total cost of the structural steel is less than 5% of the total project value. And that total project value is submitted with permitting. And so it's an estimate on the cost of steel at that time. So we had to set that price point at some point in time. So that's what was proposed there. So this responds to some of the comments that we heard last time that we want to exclude smaller projects from needing to comply with this. So I'll leave it there. I know you guys have some additional questions.
Well, before we get into questions, I think do you want to just roll right into the concrete one? You get them both on the table, please?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So this one proposes that ready mixed concrete mixes meet specific global warming potential limits and documents compliance through product specific type 3 EPDs, similar to the steel proposal. Exceptions include precast, shotcrete, and auger cast. These are additions that help clarify that we're really only looking at ready mixed here. If other additions need to be included that were overlooked, we can add those. Again, we have more exceptions for projects that are under the 50,000 square feet and projects that use less than 50 cubic yards of total concrete. And that, again, is allowing projects that use less material to kind of forego these requirements. Also projects where no concrete providers have EPDs within 100 miles, and that's limiting the, or not putting undue burden on contractors who would need trucks to travel longer distances and potentially damaging that mix. And then we have a secondary compliance path that uses a weighted average for all the regulated concrete mixes to meet the GWP limits that are in that table there.
Okay.
Oops.
Is that it on that one, probably?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So I also invited the other proponents to this, specifically from Carbon Leadership Forum. Megan or Megan, are you interested in speaking to this?
I don't have anything to add at this time, but I'm happy to answer questions during the discussion.
Great, thank you for that. And Webley, there's a third co-proponent, right?
Yeah, RMI is not on the call today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we get into this, let's talk about what an action by this tag could mean. So if this moves forward, there are a couple of things we can, of course, we can, recommend as proposed. We can obviously, reject the proposal from moving forward, or we can modify. But I also like to put out there that, the State Building Code Council has rulemaking authority, as granted by the legislature. This TAG does not. This is an advisory body. So even if it does move forward with a majority vote in some format, we can move it forward for the BFP to dive deeper and modify and obviously take testimony. So this is the beginning of the road for sure, and there are a lot of options here of what we recommend to the BFP. This is a common practice on the energy side where we give our recommendations of what the BFP should how the BFP should address this. So I just want to put that on the table. That is not necessarily a hard recommendation if it's a split vote. So okay, with that, let's begin. Again, this isn't formal testimony, but we want everyone to feel to speak and have their voice heard. So let's start with hands and just start working through it. Mark, please.
I'm not sure how, as a building official, I would enforce this. And I think I mentioned this last time we talked about this, as far as really knowing what products are being put into projects, knowing how many cubic yards of concrete is going to go into it. And also don't want to hinge a C of O on something like this. The time to discover this is probably prior to anything being placed. And so to have this sentence, I think it's 1901.8 in this, says that the prior to the C of O being authorized, we need to collect all this information about your project. And personally, I think that's really the wrong time to address that. And I don't know legalese if we can deny a C of O because of the, I don't know if I could actually deny a C of O because I don't have this EPD. So that's my input into that.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Tim?
Yeah, this is Tim with AGC. Stoyan, have you had your attorney review these two proposals?
No.
Okay. Significant amount of folks on the call think there's a problem with that, and so I just want to mention that the Building Code Council's governing statute in RCW specifically prevents the council from adopting codes that would provide unwarranted preferential treatment to certain building materials. So I want you to be aware of that, Stoyan, and I think between now and the next committee meeting that you ought to have your attorney look at that. I think that would be warranted, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, and I see Andrea's hand up. Andrea, let's just reestablish that reference that was it RCW?
Yeah, let me look it up really fast.
Okay, well, or we can, no hurry, we can come back to it. Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, here we go. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you're not ready. Okay, let's go to Matt. We'll come back to that, Andrea. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some comments here. I know there's someone on your committee from Shelton. I heard that before. I grew up in Shelton, so way to go, Shelton, for representing yourselves there. My mom and dad still live in the town. My name is Matt Hink. I'm the Environmental Director for Cal Portland Company. We're a Western United States concrete producer as well as a cement producer. I'm also the sitting president of Washington Aggregates and Concrete Association. I am a subject matter expert on EPDs. I'm also a subject matter expert on concrete manufacturing and delivery to our customer base. I've been in this industry a long time. The goal of what is trying to be accomplished here is called Buy Clean. And this has been attempted 3 times in the state legislature. Each time that has gone through the legislature has discovered that it's a very complicated and nuanced process. There's a lot of complications in the concrete world and has not passed out of the legislature. This is a direct end run around the legislative process by certain people, and it's not right. So let me just say that concrete, 85 to 90% of the embodied carbon in concrete is controlled or dictated by the cement material that is available to the concrete producer. Concrete producers have to have long-term supply agreements from their suppliers of cement in order to be able to reliably operate their cement for their concrete operations. You cannot easily switch from one cement supplier to another, especially in today's market where most cement suppliers are completely sold out. So your supply chain is limited by the cement that you have. So the lowest embodied carbon EPD is going to be one that uses locally produced cement because that cement doesn't have to be transported into our market. Washington State only produces 30% of its own cement. So only those companies that have access to local cement are going to have the lowest possible EPD numbers. That is a fact. You can't lower your EPD numbers with you only have 10% to 15% of your operational energy to play with, and you have to run your plant. You need electricity and you need fuel to run your plant. So this does not belong in this process. The Buy Clean process is much more nuanced, and just publishing a table with concrete standards that don't rely on adequate data is not right. And I've heard from the last call that the reference was made that GSA is also doing the same thing. Well, the GSA process is completely flawed. Industry had no input on that, and they're going ahead without any industry input on their standards. So backing it up by saying that GSA support is you're modeling this after what GSA done is not correct. Lastly, I want to say, because I've taken too much time, is that this process does not also respect the fact that there are many portable concrete plant operations in the state. In order to produce a type 3 EPD for a concrete operation, you need to have 1 year of operational data. That's part of the ISO standards that underlie producing EPDs. Most portable plants are never in a location for more than a year. So this rule would preclude any concrete going into commercial construction coming from a portable plant. So I'm going to stop there. I know there's others from our industry on the call that want to make comments. I think I've made my points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And we'll give a chance, obviously, for the proponents to rebut any of this, but let's keep moving through. Seth, please.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, members of the TAG committee and all in attendance. My name is Seth Holt. I'm the sales manager for Lehigh Northwest Cement Company. I also serve a position on the board of directors with the Washington Aggregates and Concrete Association as the cement director. I have also been in the industry for 15 plus years and have represented manufacturers on the focus of sustainability efforts in that time. During the last TAG meeting, which was on May 11th, we did a little bit of research and data collected using the EC3 carbon accounting tool found through Carbon Leadership Forum's website under the heading product selection and procurement. So which we could assume these statistics are based on. It came directly from one of the proponents' websites. So Washington State as a whole has 2,346 type 3 product specific EPDs directly in relation to cast in place concrete under CSI Division 033000, which is exactly what we're focusing on today. Most of this data is based around metropolitan areas, King County especially, a little bit focusing on Clark County, but major metropolitan areas, which make up 72% of this data statewide. So the issued reporting itself really reflects to the fact that there are many concrete producers statewide who are not represented in the proponent's statistics and cap limit, barring they use the EC3 data sets. And confirmed by the proponent in the last TAG meeting, this data was true. Western Washington has the bulk of this data. The distance and proximity of the supply chain, as Matt alluded to, and advantages on EPDs favor metropolitan areas based on production facilities utilizing marine and rail transport available for cement, slag, and fly ash, or better known as cementitious materials. In the statistics tool, it's called the supply chain uncertainty factor. That does not include the addition of supply chain disruptions, shortages, inflation, embargoes, and demand for imported or modified logistic plans for materials. Overall, the company I am employed by services materials that supply into rural customers, Clallam County, Skagit County, Island, Lewis, Klickitat, Okanagan, Grays Harbor, and Chelan counties. And some of these customers who couldn't attend today are owner operators. They batch their own truck. Some of them drive that truck to the job site and manage the back end of their business as well. So these are small businesses which are mainly family owned. And a one-size-fits-all approach with cap limits such as the proposed code change will put my rural customers at a major disadvantage to compete with larger corporations. There's without a doubt overall premiums and services and goods for these small businesses will provide an impact of passed on costs. Okay. Especially in communities with smaller budgets and fewer projects to spread out that cost in lower populations. And in summary, I'll wrap up here is that we as an industry question the involuntary cap requirements on concrete mix designs based on the invalidity of statistics that favors an imbalance of data to King County and Clark County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Seth. Michael, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Mike Innes here on behalf of the Association of Washington Business. AWB is the state's largest and oldest business association in Washington. We have about 7,000 companies who belong to my association. And I want to mention that I submitted a letter to you, both the TAG chair and the State Building Code Council chair that outlines our concerns with this proposal. So that should be in front of you. If it's not, it's in your inbox, so I'll highlight that. And it's signed by more than 50 other businesses and labor groups who are directly impacted by this proposal, so I would urge you to read it. I won't go through each of the points there, but I do want to highlight one in particular, which is this idea that there won't be cost impacts in the industry. The application that the proponents filled out allows them to not have to fill in any of the small business impact statements or cost implication statements if they declare there is no cost impact. I think that's a little bizarre and probably doesn't lead to good public policy because you're making decisions without doing proper analysis. I would urge you to do a much deeper dive into understanding what the cost impact would be of these two proposals on the two industries. I have a number of members who you've heard from already and will likely hear from in the future who disagree with the concept that there won't be cost impacts in the industry. And I don't think you should just take the word of the proponent that there won't be and move something forward without doing due diligence and understanding whether there actually will be or not. I'm being told there is, and I would urge this body to do additional research to get to the bottom of that issue. I'm available for questions. Like I said, I'm easy to find. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to watch or reach out. Thank you,
Mike. Stoyan or Annette, I'm not seeing Mike's letter in the attachments. Is that it just was submitted after this was posted?
If it was submitted today, then it's not on the website.
Just want to thank you. Just clarify for everyone.
Yeah, I submitted it today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's not.
We'll get it. Okay.
And regarding the cost benefit analysis, I don't know why it's a common understanding that staff will be able to provide the cost benefit analysis. Staff is using the cost benefit analysis provided by the proponents. So any disagreement, anything you can provide, don't push staff to research it. Just help us to find the data and we will add it to the rulemaking documents. If it makes sense what I'm saying. We are not the professionals here who submitted the proposal, and we are not the professionals involved in this business. So any help will be appreciated.
That's a good comment and request right up front. Thank you, Stein. Okay, let's keep working here. Is it Lauren? Lauren, please.
Thank you to members of the TAG committee for your time today. My name is Lauren Bowling and I'm with the Iron Workers Local 29. I'll keep this short to avoid repeating any points that my colleagues have already made, but the building codes is a life safety code and is intended to address issues within this scope. Local 29 does not believe that the carbon limit proposal on steel or concrete fit under these criteria. Additionally, this would mandate winners and losers for building materials and ignores the carbon footprints of other common materials like glass, wood, and aluminum that also have a large impact on carbon. In closing, I would just like to reiterate that State Building Codes Council is prohibited from providing preferential treatment for building materials and would urge the TAG to look further into this issue before making a decision.
Great, thank you, Lauren. And there is a Ironworkers letter, right?
Correct, there is. Mark submitted that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Joe, please.
Do you want me to show the letter?
No, I just, I think that one's posted. I see that right now, so thank you.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Joe Kendo. I'm the Government Affairs Director at the Washington State Labor Council. We're a federation of about 600 local unions that represent over 500,000 workers across the state in nearly every industry. I have also submitted some written comments this morning, so you likely haven't seen them yet, but just in short, I wanted to iterate that we've been involved in a series of legislative conversations to this end, or, at least tangentially, related to some of these concepts that are being elevated today. And, we would ask that the recommendation from the TAG to the council, and that the council then, accept, that it not take action on developing these kinds of policies, given the pretty robust conversations that we've all been having with a very broad swath of the construction community in the legislature. And in 2021, the legislature adopted a budget proviso that facilitates an analysis, at least with respect to steel, by the Washington Institute of Public Policy to compare existing types and resourcing, examine the benefits to Washington workers and the Washington economy, and examine life cycle and embodied carbon greenhouse gas emissions. We would just ask that analysis, continue to happen, that the conversation remain with the legislature. And, we think that that is a platform that provides for the greatest amount of stakeholder engagement, and just to kind of continue the work that folks in industry, business, labor, environmental advocates, and a series of experts in the field have been plugging into, and would hate to see the Building Code Council kind of circumvent those conversations. Some more details in the letter, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joe. Darcy, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Darcy Nonamaker. I'm the Government Affairs Director for Washington Environmental Council and Washington Conservation Voters. Wanted to express that our organization supports measurement, reporting, and limits on embodied carbon for appropriate building materials. And the proposals on concrete and steel are an important first step, but we definitely think that there are improvements needed and a lot more work is needed in this space to make sure that there is consistency with what has been talked about in the legislature. and to have different policies sort of working collaboratively together. First, we share the concerns about the treatment of different structural materials. Concrete, steel, and wood are the most significant and widely used structural building materials, and excluding wood creates a big blind spot and a missed opportunity for reducing embodied carbon emissions in wood materials. And it also creates an unfair competition that may inadvertently or unintentionally impact material choice, rather than promoting procurement of low carbon materials within each category as intended. And when we're looking at identifying or supporting lower carbon and climate smart wood products, we're really looking at the fact that wood comes from different forests and originate from some forests that are net sequesters of carbon, while other forests may be net emitters of carbon. And so EPDs paired with sourcing information such as land ownership, state of origin, any forest management certification status of that wood material helps to bring invaluable information to the fore and ensure consistency with other building materials around upstream emissions such as steel. And we also want to make sure that any reporting systems or mechanisms for information are consistent with what we are developing at the state level. So with that, I will conclude and happy to submit more details if helpful.
Darcy, thank you. And I'm gonna, we're moving through this in kind of a testimony, format, but really it's a working session. So let's jump in when we can here. So Darcy, do you have a proposal of how we would include wood and timber in here? These are separate proposals, but
yeah,
I think I heard your recommendation there.
Yeah, at the very least, I think maybe a separate. I'm not as familiar with the Building Code Council structure, but an amendment that sort of incorporates wood. If there's sort of a steel component, a concrete component, there should be a wood component as well. And at the state level, what we have included in legislation is engineered wood products, so things like CLT. So I think that there is a way to do it that is consistent, and then there are very clear reporting elements in state policy proposals.
Okay. And so on that subject, I want to be very transparent to everyone. I'm in the engineered wood product industry. And so I want to make sure that that's known, but also that there's no perceived bias there. We do hear this a lot, and I was going to say, one of our new members that's not yet not here today expressed the same concern that Steel Expert wants to see, of course, timber brought in the fold here. So I want to ask the proponents at this opportunity, what are your thoughts on that? What is your reaction?
So I have a wood proposal written and ready to go if the tag is interested in accepting it. I asked if I could submit it and was told that I'm out of, since it's a different section of the code, that it's out, but I don't know if that's a tag decision that can be made, but I'm happy to submit that. And it is in line with 1103 and is specific for engineered structural material wood products.
Okay, thank you, Webley. Yes, I mean, this is just a thought exercise here at this point, but procedurally, Stoyan, obviously we're past proposals, so.
The window closed, yes. So we are not accepting new proposals, and it's not only you that we told you no. We're getting 10 offers per day, and if we open it, there is a specific procedure, and again the window for statewide code proposals closed. I think it was April 8th. If it's a modification to already submitted section, yes, but we're talking about wood, which is a totally different chapter. It's not in 19, it's not in 22. So I don't know how we can make the connection.
So Stoyan, what I'm hearing there is it would potentially be staff's opinion that is too substantial of a modification within our proposal procedure?
Well, wood belongs to a different chapter, so you can't add wood in chapter 19, which is, for concrete, and chapter 22, which is steel. Wood is in chapter 24. So it's not a staff opinion, it just, I don't want to violate the council procedure, which says, those proposals, statewide amendments are submitted during the window approved by the council, which again ended on April 8th. We can evaluate on a case by case, but that's the general rule. That's the general statement.
Yeah. These two proposals were submitted separately, obviously separate proposals for separate chapters. What prevents, if these do move forward, what prevents the council from pulling these together?
Was it a question or?
Yeah, just a open discussion about or trying to understand better why they have to be separate proposals, or why maybe I'll ask the proponent why they were submitted separately, just to be.
Well, they're proposals for different chapters.
Understood. Okay. Well, I'll leave it. I just want to try to spark a conversation here, but okay, let's come back. Let's keep going. Jessica, please.
I think Todd, if
Yep.
I could just add something quickly, we support the fair inclusion of all structural materials, so with the addition of engineered wood, but we also track policies across the US. And I think that the original proposal of steel and concrete reflects the fact that when you look at global end use emissions, cement and steel together are responsible for 15% of all global emissions. And so it would be unfair to act as if there is no difference across those three different structural materials in terms of their impact on environmental and human health. And so I would fully support including engineered wood. And I think that the points brought up by this committee or by those in this working group are great. But I think it would also be unfair to act as if there is no difference between these materials.
Okay, thank you, Beverly. Okay, let's keep going. Jessica, please. Can you hear me, Jessica?
Oh, yep. Sorry, my computer froze. So thanks. Hey folks, my name is Jessica Koski. I'm the Washington Policy Manager for the Blue Green Alliance. We're a statewide coalition of labor unions and environmental groups that collaborate to address climate change in ways that simultaneously create good jobs. And we're really excited to see this growing momentum behind materials-focused embodied carbon policies like those that NBI has put to the Building Code Council. But we are concerned about the proposals in their current form. We've been active in the legislative conversations around buy fair that several other folks have already mentioned. And as part of the stakeholder engagement on that policy, we've identified several things that we think are really critical for a successful policy that are missing here. One that it's already come up, so I won't belabor it, but is making sure that the policy is material neutral by including all products that are direct competitors of each other. And so in this case, that would mean including engineered wood products. And just building on the conversation that we just heard, it would be great to think about ways to actually integrate that into one proposal to ensure that if something were to move forward, it would move forward together. In addition, we appreciate NBI's revision to focus on larger buildings. Something else that would be great to think through is a really structured phase-in. Something that is done in 1103 or that has been part of the conversation there is to actually phase in regulations by project size so that you could start with larger projects, which then allows learning to flow throughout the industry. You're starting with those that have the most resources to do that type of reporting and meet those type of standards. And then while other smaller contractors and smaller manufacturers have an opportunity to build up to capacity to comply with those regulations. In addition, wanted to flag that MBI's proposals aren't clear on who's responsible for doing the collecting around environmental product declarations, verifying compliance, or where sort of that data is going to live. We would strongly recommend having some type of sort of centralized reporting that's publicly accessible. Environmental product declarations are expensive to make, and they're also an incredibly valuable source of information. So having those live somewhere, sort of, where they're publicly accessible, they can be a very valuable resource in informing future complementary embodied carbon policies, whole building approaches to embodied carbon, and can also provide insight into the supply chain challenges and local market conditions that are impacting the availability of low carbon building materials here in Washington. Sort of one that's already been referenced is limited access to local cement. So by having all of those EPDs live in one place, they can become a really valuable source of information in trying to address some of those challenges. The Washington Department of Commerce and Carbon Leadership Forum are currently sort of working on a database that was funded by the 2021-2023 capital budget, which will be is being set up to track environmental product declarations and labor impacts associated with structural materials used on large public building projects. This will be complete in the fall of 2022, and so could provide a model for what this type of reporting can look like. And then lastly, I just wanted to note that we think that the policies would benefit from clearer reporting parameters and guidelines. In particular, two pieces that have come up in the conversations around by clean and by fair are the need for more allowed covered product definitions that use material industry standards. To make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, and likewise maintaining a list of applicable product category rules that are undergirding those environmental product declarations. If this policies were to move forward, we would strongly encourage NDI to work with a broad set of stakeholders, including those that have been active at the legislature, but making sure to bring in labor, environmental advocates, all of the suppliers, structural engineers, contractors, other members of the building community, a full set of the stakeholders with the diverse perspectives to address those challenges and make sure that this could be successful. And also think that it's important that whatever the Building Code Council do aligns with the work that the state already has underway, particularly the Department of Commerce and the Department of Enterprise Services working group on this. So I will stop there and thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Thank you, Jessica. Next, we have Mark, please.
Great. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Struley here today on behalf of the Northwest District Council of Ironworkers. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And a lot of our main concerns have already been addressed, but we definitely do not support any proposal that comes forward and creates an unlevel playing field for all building products. So I think there's been some back and forth discussion about that already, but we definitely don't support that. And honestly, as much as we applaud the excellent stakeholder process that you guys are handling today, we felt a little bit blindsided by this. We've been working in earnest with the legislature on the various, buy clean, buy fair. We're not climate deniers by any stretch of the imagination, and starting to feel uncomfortable that it looks like there's efforts to do workarounds of the legislative process when we feel like we've really been in good faith to try to move this ball forward. So I just felt like, in fairness, I needed to make that comment. We, do think that there is differences in building products, especially when it comes to safety. So I feel like I need to say that. And we would hope that this committee would put this proposal down and not advance it. I feel like some of these are being brought forward and putting the advisory committee in an awkward position when this is being well worked in the legislature. And this advisory group is a little more out of the public eye. So we're disappointed in that, but we're very grateful that you've opened the door wide, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for us to be here today. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Max, please.
Thank you to the Building Code Council TAG members.
My name is Max Puchtel, and I'm the Director of Sustainability for AISC, the American Institute of Steel Construction. I'm here to testify in opposition to the NBI proposal. AISC has long been an active and collaborative partner with many groups who seek emission reduction solutions for the structural steel industry. And in that spirit, we acknowledge the good intent of this proposal. But sadly, this proposal is an example of what happens to those good intentions when they occur unilaterally, devoid of stakeholder and industry input, as it isn't in tune with the reality of the structural steel industry. You may know that a similar code change proposal was presented by NBI at a recent IBC hearings in Rochester, New York. It was defeated 13-0 based on a multitude of reasons, including the fact that it was deemed inappropriate with respect to the scope of the IBC. We have no choice but to oppose this proposal due to a myriad of technical, feasible, and logistical errors, which I shall now explain. This proposal allows compliance through government programs such as the Green Power Partnership or the acquisition of greater than 50% of electricity from renewable resources. No domestic or foreign producer of structural or reinforcing steel currently complies with these requirements. This proposal and the one addressing concrete are inconsistent with the treatment of different construction materials and products. Requirements are very stringent for some materials and non-existent for other materials. This approach results in a proposal where the materials and products that have been the most transparent about their environmental impacts are subjected to the most stringent requirements. As a consequence, the materials and products that have not provided designers with the tools needed to evaluate their products are effectively rewarded for their lack of transparency. The proposal allows 25% of the project's structural steel products to avoid meeting any threshold at all. This proposal limits the use of low embodied carbon domestic steel while simultaneously encouraging the import of steel with embodied CO2 levels of up to 3 times that of equivalent US products. This loophole will result in the unintended consequence of raising rather than lowering the average embodied carbon for the project's steel. In all of the sections, there is no definition for steel products. Do they require CO2 documentation in screws, nuts, bolts, sprinkler pipe, conduit, or just structural material as defined by industry standards? The supporting information contains multiple mistakes of fact, including the proposed the proposed language will encourage the worst 10% of steel product manufacturers to reduce the carbon content of the materials to be more competitive in the market, end quote. That is totally not true. This proposal creates a massive loophole that 25% of the worst steel producers in the world can easily walk through. The implication that these steel products covered in this proposal represent nearly half of the embodied carbon emissions of the domestic steel industry, or 46 million tons of CO2 annually, and 1% of overall CO2 emissions is also wrong. The products covered by this proposal represent less than 1/5 of the cited value and less than 0.2% of overall emissions. The supporting information highlights the value of high recycled content steel as a means of reducing embodied carbon levels. All domestically produced hot rolled structural sections are already produced using high recycled content feedstock. The statement that 90% of US producers can meet these thresholds is patently false. 90% of the reporting companies cannot achieve these numbers. In fact, of the 3 US producers of hot rolled sections, one company does not meet these thresholds and another company meets the thresholds at only one of its 2 mills. Finally, the proposed CO2 limits are not based on 100%, 175% of the industry-wide average GWP values as published by AISC. Rather, they are the industry-wide averages themselves. I know because I published them. Recommending this proposal would be a mistake, and I urge you to oppose it.
Thank you, Max. Max, either now or after, do you have a reference to the ICC proposal you were that you mentioned at the beginning?
Sure, I can find that.
Okay, thank you. I'd love to see that. Okay, thanks, Max. I just want to take a quick pause here for the TAG members. This is good discussion, and we're going to keep going. We are at 12:15. We're only scheduled to go to 1 o'clock. I suspect we're not going to get to existing building code today. Is that everyone else's assessment? And we should call that right now and allow anyone who's waiting for the existing building code to defer to the next meeting. Stoyan, do you have thoughts?
We were planning to have the last meeting in June 6th, but if this is the case, then we may need another one on June 1st.
That's what I'm feeling. Is that Or June 8th? Well, let's see how we do here, but
June
just
8th, sorry, June 8th and June 1st. Apologize.
okay. So does anyone oppose that we take that off the agenda for today? Okay. And let's do that. Let's continue with this, but then we'll conclude after these two proposals. Okay. Let's go to Andrea, please.
Todd, I just wanted one quick comment. Webley, can you confirm whether the limits that Max is referring to were updated after the previous meeting?
Yes.
I believe that was an error that they were, and he's 100% correct. They were the industry average and not 175th and not 175%, and now have been updated.
Megan, thanks for stepping in there. Yes, that's correct. We did update the values, and they are based on what AISCI, I think of any of those numbers wrong, and it aligns with the values that are being used for bike lane. So we're trying to be consistent in that policy. And if I can just state one more thing, at IBC, the proposal was not voted down because it did not fit in the IBC. People testified against that, but that was not one of the reasons why it was voted down.
Webley, can you expand a little bit on that by chance, or?
Sure. I don't have the reasons why. They listed 3 reasons why it was voted down, and one of those reasons was concern that the majority of the products already complied with the requirements, so it wasn't necessary within the building code. And then there was another reason, but it was not related to it not fitting within the IBC. The IBC preserves the public health and safety, and provides safeguards from hazards associated with the built environment. And that's where we see that this fits in, addressing climate change through products.
Okay, thank you. Is there by chance any rebuttal to that from the previous testimony? Okay, if not, just raise your hand. All right, if so, I'm sorry. Okay, Andrea, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to revisit the preferential treatment part. I think it's pretty clear within the statute that we don't have authority to move it through the process unless we have a legislative mandate, or, we asked legal counsel if it was something that we were able to take up. So I got to rush into an appointment here real fast. I'll still be on the call, but I just wanted to revisit that. And I'm ready to make a motion whenever we're done with discussing. So thank you.
Andrea, did you by chance pull that reference again, or Stoyan, the RCW?
Yeah, I think Stoyan did. It was chapter 27.020. And it's subsection 4.
Yeah, this is what we discussed last time. Just put it in on the screen again. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll be back in like 5.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Bruce, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just a second. Let me pull up my screen. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Todd. My name is Bruce Chadden, Executive Director for the Washington Aggregates and Concrete Association, on behalf of 180 of our members for cement, concrete, aggregates, and other related businesses across Washington. As Seth mentioned, the concrete industry's got about 36,000 EPDs nationally and about 2,400 in Washington. Our EPDs increase each year as more projects are asking for EPDs. Our industry is not opposed to EPDs. We are opposed to those that do not know our industry mandate what they think we should be doing. What holds us back from more emission reductions? Project specifications using traditional boilerplate specifications that specify far more cement than is needed to get the performance outcomes they need. Projects that don't take advantage of material innovations we can provide to meet performance and emission objectives. Specifications are ideas that direct how we should make our product regardless of performance. Flexibility is pretty key on how we manage changes. Specified mix designs can change by the time bids are requested and awarded. When projects start months later, mixed designs may not be the same as submitted for approval because construction schedules change, structural elements and other performance requirements change. Once the project starts, mixed designs may change multiple times during the job for more schedule or constructability changes. These changes require new EPDs be submitted. Washington state policy has affected our material supply options, as others have testified. As a result, Washington is now a long-term importer of cements and cementitious materials. There is not enough production capability to meet the needs of the region, let alone the state. Materials vary from the state, regional state sources, Canada, and Asia. Our supply chain and material sources limitations are very real. They change regularly, and there are shortages. We need flexibility to be able to manage all of these factors. Arbitrary carbon limits are not going to be able to anticipate all of these changes. What doesn't work is a one-size-fits-all approach imposed on how we should design our products, whether it's a sidewalk mix, 15,000 PSI, high strength with high strength steel, or a bridge structure in Eastern Washington. Concrete performance is more than emissions. Collaboration. Good collaboration begins early in the design process to create the strategy to meet or exceed carbon budgets of all structural materials used in a project. We do it every day. Predetermined carbon limits remove or minimize this collaboration. This will take the designer, contractor, and project team out of the equation, reduce innovations at all levels, and become an obstacle to maximize emission reductions. We don't need arbitrarily prescribed limits in the building code that are derived on statistically invalid data by others to tell us how to reduce emissions on a strength-based approach while sacrificing fundamental performance and project team collaboration. How do we get simple steps to get to reduced emissions? Performance specifications versus prescriptive specifications. Use cement content you need, not the cement content you specify. Specify new blended cement technologies such as Portland limestone cements. Utilize supplemental cementitious materials such as fly ash, slag, and admixture technology, and not limit innovation in materials. Ask us what we can do to meet emission objectives, then we can make some progress. There are 4 reasons why the legislature has rejected complex and prescriptive procurement bills over the last 4 sessions. They were ideas that didn't make sense. As to 1103, as Wembley mentioned earlier, 1103 has been up in the last 2 legislatures. It has not gone out of committee. It has not passed the legislature for that very reason. In an active House and Senate proviso, the legislature has asked the construction industry for specific recommendations on how to achieve emission reductions and the proper use of EPDs. This process will conclude in the 2023 session. As of today, the SBCC would be directly interfering with the work in progress of the legislature and should reject any further consideration of these proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Senator Wilson, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring to the council's attention that there were 2 letters that were sent to the Building Code Council, and I don't know if the copy went to this TAG meeting, but there was a letter from Senators Shessler and Honeyford that also indicated that they thought that this was out of the realm of the TAG committee or the Building Code Council to be able to do this based on that RCW that you referred to earlier. And then I followed up with Representative Hoff followed up with a letter supporting the letter that Shessler and Honeyford sent in. So, and then, as I sit here and listen, if you hear a good majority of these people speaking, there is a whole lot of deep concerns about this proposal. And again, as a member of the legislature, I would like to reiterate that the legislature, again, has addressed this in the legislature, and there was no passage indicating the will of the legislature. So I do believe that you need to get a legal opinion as to whether or not this can even be done. As to the WISP study that Joe Kendo mentioned, that is due on December 1st, 2022. So several months from now, it would be, seem to be there a good idea to wait until at least, bless you, at least you're a good suggestion to wait until that study is finished. There are several studies in the legislature. This one is steel and concrete. And then of course we have the natural gas one which I really believe the Building Code Council should not be ignoring, because there is reasons why we're spending the money to look into these issues. And so I think that this committee needs to take that into advisement. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wilson. That is one of my biggest questions, of course, is, establishing, should this move forward, where in the process would we establish that the legislature has made the mandate or not, right? And I'll raise this question now for others to comment on, or Senator Wilson to respond. This is a stakeholder group, and I do have questions of, accountability, and I would potentially favor moving something this complex forward to the committee, just so there is some level of accountability of those positions under the rulemaking authority being appointed, knowing that this would have to come back down to the tag level for more work, but guided by the council. So I just want to put that out there for thought and comments as we move forward here. So thank you. Okay, let's go to Marvin, please. Marvin, I probably muted you, so you need to unmute. If I can do it.
Is that working?
There we go. Yep, sorry about that.
Well, I had to go to a different, I'm not technologically too savvy, just a little small concrete producer out here in Grays Harbor County, family-owned business, been in business for, I've been here for 34 years now. Anyways, I'll try and make it short and sweet. Some of my concerns, obviously, one is to do with cost. People are talking about these costs that aren't really necessarily associated. We've got a current project that actually required an EPD that we had not seen. And consequently, that's going to cost us close to the range of $15,000 to drum up something that I may or may not use again in the next 5 years, as long as these things last. I guess I can get 30 mixes with it, so forth. And then listening to some of the other things there, I heard the gentleman from Shelton, who's an inspector, and just being this small producer, we deal with a lot of small end contractors who one day he might order up, say 45 yards of concrete and ends up shortchanging that order, and he's now doing 60 yards. Does that mean that we have to turn around and report this project and have to go through this whole process of declaring this project being now something above 50 yards and so forth? And then to cap it off at the inside of it, how do I compete with certain projects in our market area if I can't meet a certain criteria of this carbon footprint out here in the rural areas, whereas somebody else might have more access to a cement that does produce it? I can't just put in 3 or 4 different silos here at a plant. One silo, a brand new silo, is going to cost me just about $150,000 to erect a new silo to store this other product that will meet this project possibly. And I don't understand how I'll be able to compete in something such as that. Therefore, I'm obviously against this kind of measure. That's where we're at.
Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you for your time.
Jay, please.
Thank you. I'm calling today from Seattle. I'm an architect with over 20 years of experience, and I'll admit for Bruce, actually also a specifier some of my time. So I bring some expertise today in researching vetting building materials. We, as the Miller Hall Partnership, signed on to a letter that was sent to the TAG yesterday and is posted in that document. We don't need to bring up, but co-signed by the Blue Green Alliance and also the Washington Environmental Council. I'm speaking today on behalf of my colleague at Miller Hall, Alex Yanchenko. Jess Koski covered a lot of what's in that letter, but I thought I'd just provide a little bit of additional context from my perspective about this work. We currently rely on highly abstract models and assumptions for modeling greenhouse gas emissions in our structural systems when we design buildings. Product and supplier specific EPDs really provide us a pathway to measure, manage, and reduce those impacts. And I'd say those are impacts that we design and procure and build as a team, as a contractor, client, owner, an architect, and engineer. I'm also speaking today as a practitioner who's specified building product material disclosures on public projects for over 5 years, K-12 schools, higher ed, even DS projects. So both ingredient reporting, but also EPDs. I will say the majority of this was done for products that are, say, manufacturer specific, like an Armstrong ceiling tile or a metal stud from Clark Dietrich. And I don't want to underestimate something that was previously brought up about how nuanced the web is around the commodity products of concrete and structural steel. And so I'm really glad to have people a lot smarter at this working hard, not just in the legislature that's been talked about, but also at the Carbon Leadership Forum to put forward the right kind of structure for us to continue to reduce our emissions. And so I think just to highlight in closing, our recommendations, if the TAG does take this forward, was really to include all structural materials, so wood, as has been suggested, really clarify the reporting parameters, both supply chain and upstream impacts for EPDs and the product category rules, to make sure that we're working with the legislative stakeholders and the research leaders in the space. Really clarify the mechanism for delivering on this. I think one example that's come to mind is really around maybe NFRC fenestration requirements in the energy code, if we need an example. I think for steel, specific to the steel proposal, the non-EPD pathway kind of circumvents things that are happening around updating the PCRs already. So that's a little confusing. And I think from the concrete side, specifically, the something that was listed in the letter that's also on the website that was submitted by Dave Walsh Consulting was just the onerous nature of the 100% compliance for mixed designs. So we would suggest revisiting that, and maybe even, again, an analogy that came up earlier on the call that might be worth revisiting is maybe a small business exemption similar to the fenestration that's in the energy code. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Micah, please.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. Micah Chappelle, again, I represent code officials on the State Building Code Council. And hearing all the testimony today, I haven't heard a lot from code officials, and that is the group that would have to enforce this language. And quite honestly, most of this language is really not enforceable once it gets to our purview. This is the type of stuff that really should be possibly gone through the Department of Commerce or somewhere else, because you're putting requirements on products really prior to when they arrive at the job site or prior to a plan set or something else. But getting to the technical merits of this, if we want to move up to the definitions on the concrete proposal, you're talking about cementitious materials. You're providing a definition here that you aren't even using in your proposal. That language is not found in your proposal. Then we move on to concrete. Concrete already has a very thorough and vetted definition in the building code and has for some time. This doesn't really align with what is currently adopted and is currently vetted through the national process for the definition of concrete. Then we move into the carbon dioxide equivalent information. You do provide that definition, but then you also create another definition within that definition for global warming potential. That's the second part of that paragraph or second part of that definition. Then moving down into the main body of your proposal, you get into some of the stuff here that has a lot of information, again, that's just not enforceable. We're looking at distances to project sites, all these different measurements and mixtures. This stuff is just not going to be able to be tracked by a building department or code official. Moving over to the steel proposal, we get into some definitions that don't make real sense on something that's actually enforceable. you're giving us definitions of contracts. The code official is not going to review or enforce your contract. Even though maybe that's not how it seems, that is definitely how it's somewhat written once you get further down. Then we also, the carbon dioxide equivalent here, same problem as the previous proposal for your definition. You're providing a definition within a definition. If you want the definition of global warming potential, create that as a separate definition. And then we do try to steer away from having requirements within definitions. Moving further down into the steel proposal, I do have some struggles. Again, you're indicating that contracts under section 2205.3.2 for steel production, contracts for that need to be provided to the code official. You can scroll down just a little farther, Stoyan, under 2 point, right there. You're indicating that these contracts need to be provided for steel production, mind you. This is not installation or some other type of standard for this steel. You're actually requiring that a contract for steel production be provided to the code official. And I'm sorry, that doesn't work. This is just not the place for this. Again, the building code needs to be enforceable, and this is not enforceable. So I'm going to recommend that the tag not move this forward. And if it does come up at the council without significant changes, at that time, I will reevaluate whether or not I would vote against it based on additional input from other code officials. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Micah. Bruce, please.
Thank you, Todd. Yes, sir. I don't mean to take more time than allotted, but I know there's others. But as I was looking at and talking about cost and looking at what Stoyan said relative to SBIS, Small Business Economic Statements, to rely for the State Building Code Council to just rely on what a proponent checks a box or not, or doesn't fill in any information without regard to if there are costs, it would seem to me the State Building Code Council has the obligation under RCW 972702 number 4 to not include any unnecessary increased costs to construction. If, for example, a proponent had an incentive to say there are no costs, all costs are passed on, but yet, as we're hearing today, there are significant costs that are being incurred or suggested that are going to be incurred. It would seem to me that the State Building Code Council has the obligation in rulemaking to do an SBIS statement and a thorough one at that. That's just wanted to make that clarification as it strikes me.
Thank you for that, Bruce.
Can I clarify something here?
Please do it.
So when we get the proposal, we are using the data in the proposal for the preliminary cost benefit analysis. And if we find something that's not right, we provide, in addition to the submitted cost benefit analysis, we are providing staff opinion there. And when you folks are saying the cost benefit analysis is not accurate, but if you're not submitting anything, then we have on one side somebody who is saying there is no cost associated with it, and we have the other side saying there is cost associated with it, but we don't have any justification. So we will do our best and we'll research it, but it doesn't mean we'll find something. That's what I was trying to clarify. And we have obligation to do two things: the cost benefit analysis and the small business economic impact statement. So these are two different things. So the stuff is.
Sorry, I appreciate that. I just think it would be unwise for the for the Code Council and rulemaking to rely on the direct input from others when rulemaking may require any agency to be able to do the SBIS on their own. You can be misled easily on one way or the other on who's going to provide you numbers for whatever purpose they provide numbers. That's my suggestion.
This is why we have these technical advisory groups. This is why we have the public comment period. This is why we have the testimony, and this is why all these meetings are open and we are listening to all this. What I'm trying to say is, when you tell me there is cost and you don't give me anything, then I can follow up and research it, but without any data, I may not be able to find something. I'm not the proponent of these proposals.
This is Matt Hink again, talking as a producer. So we as producers are, because of serious issues around antitrust in our industry, we tend not to talk about what our price of material is relative to our competitors. But there are differences in prices in the supplemental cement markets, which do drive up the cost of producing low carbon concrete. We can work with Bruce Chatton to try to figure out a way to get that information to you, but we as individual companies, on an individual basis, it's hard for us to share detailed cost information about how we run our business. That's why you're having trouble figuring it out. But we know when we produce a low carbon mix, especially ones that pull in a lot of fly ash and slag, which we have to use to bring the carbon content down, it drives our cost up.
Okay, thank you. We have 20 minutes left, so I want to keep moving here. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go to Tim, please.
Yeah, I just, we're bound by the RCW. There's no way around that. This is Tim with AGC. We're bound by the RCW. If you read section 4 of the RCW, it's very black and white. And we can debate this topic until we're blue in the face, but I just don't think we can be here. And if you read section 4, maybe Stoyan had it up a second ago, it's just one sentence, but it's pretty clear that the State Building Code Council can't be reviewing something like this. And I just want to make sure that before we get down any other path or send us to another committee, that's reviewed by all the TAG members.
Thank you, Tim. Let's look at this one more time for that reference. Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, let's go to Hannah, please.
Hi, everyone. So just quickly to reintroduce myself, I'm Hannah Waterstrat, and I'm the Director of the State Efficiency and Environmental Performance Office at the Washington Department of Commerce. I just wanted to briefly speak to some ongoing and related work, just to provide some context to this discussion. So minimizing embodied carbon in the built environment is a priority highlighted by the 2021 State Energy Strategy, which identifies the opportunity to leverage state capital projects and work to align the state project and budget development process to support achieving reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. SEEP received funding in the 2021 operating and capital budgets to partner with the University of Washington Carbon Leadership Forum on pilot projects and to develop a database and reporting system to disclose environmental and labor impacts from building materials. We have submitted a progress report on this work that is available on our website and on the CLF website, and the final legislative report is due in November. We're confident that this report and the work leading up to it will provide some insight on how best to move forward with embodied carbon legislation and help us figure out how to structure data tracking, compliance, and reporting efforts in the future. I really do appreciate all of the input provided by everyone today. Another thing that, we do think that having ongoing stakeholder engagement with state agencies, environmental groups, industry, manufacturing, and labor associations could strengthen elements of future embodied carbon policy and help boost market availability for lower carbon materials. So that's it. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to chime in here.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, back to Webley, please.
Okay, if I can just respond to a couple things that have been said, and apparently I'm losing my voice, so I apologize for that. We're not intending to skirt any sort of legislative process. Just want to make sure that we're very clear about that. We really feel that we need a belts and suspenders approach to address climate change. We need all the solutions that we can get. We need legislative processes, we need code, we need market-based solutions. And what I'm hearing is that a lot of people that have been engaged in this process today are not that familiar with the code process. And I think that's really exciting that they are now engaged in it. So I'm glad that they're here. This proposal is using existing policy mechanisms. We're not creating a new legislation to do that. So that's why we are working within this policy. I also want to circle back to what I mentioned about IBC. I pulled up the reasons why they voted it down. They thought that it was too soon to address embodied carbon at the national level within the building code. They were concerned that the renewable energy is related to the means of material construction. And I believe that somebody else mentioned that as well, and that most products already comply. So what we understood that to mean is that it's not stringent enough, which we're happy to make it more stringent, but based on what you heard today, that might not be an appropriate path forward. This code would not go into effect for years. It would give ample time for designers to be educated and manufacturers to change. And again, this proposal would not apply to all projects. It would apply to those that are over 50,000 square feet. And for concrete, that weighted average can be applied. So it does allow some flexibility. We tried to sneak in that proposal for wood that I mentioned. We missed the boat on that. I apologize for that, but carbon is not the only consideration in structural materials. Designers are considering aesthetics, resiliency, structural span, and a lot of other considerations. So I know that there's concern about that WRC, but I think that needs to be solved absolutely before this moves forward. What I've heard today that we could change in this what's in front of you, the two proposals, is excluding portable concrete providers, including making sure that the EPDs are in a publicly accessible database, and skipping noting the 2022 database because it's not in existence yet, but that could be included. Requiring 75% of the concrete to comply, not 100%. Having a small business exemption. I don't know if there's a precedence for that in code, but I think that could work. Excluding the GWP limit altogether and just having EPD reporting, that's kind of like a 50% cut to this code language. And then changing the concrete definition. I was looking at the Washington State Code and there is no definition for concrete, but there's for different types of concrete. So if that needs to be adjusted, then those seem like those are easy fixes to the code proposals that are in front of you. And I also want to encourage that the industries that are on this call to develop those global warming potential limits. We're hearing a lot that the methodology that we used is not appropriate, but we're not hearing solutions for that. So I've been working with dozens of industry professionals, including many people that have testified today and those that are associated with organizations. So I encourage them to come up with these limits because we know that this is the way that we're going to go in the future. It's just a matter of if we're using their values and their numbers or if we're using what's publicly available. So I'll leave it there. I just want to make those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Megan, please.
Thanks. So first, again, just thank you for everyone for the comments presented in the TAG meeting today. And I want to echo Webley's comments that we hope that everyone on this call continues to engage constructively with these proposals. This is definitely part of a national and global conversation, not just one happening in Washington State. And we know that I recognize many of the faces on this call from participating in those conversations, and I know they'll continue to do so. I also want to reinforce MBI's comments that there was no intention of skirting a legislative process, and highlight that the scope of projects that would be covered by Bike Lane Bike Fair Washington, which has not been passed into law, are entirely different than the ones that would be in the scope of the code, because the bike lane is only referring to state funded projects. And obviously the code applies to other projects as well. And then in terms of cost, I just want to highlight that the intent of this proposal is not to ignore cost burden, particularly for small suppliers. And we appreciate the limitations, such as brought up by Matt earlier, on what suppliers can provide in terms of cost data, because they can't have that data in the public. As a research organization, we're always sincerely excited to receive that data and be able to publish research on that. But we can only use the public available data that we do have from case studies where that has been done, like the one that was published by RMI last year. And what they found in case studies was that projects were able to achieve up to 46% reductions in embodied carbon with less than a 1% increase in cost. I'm not saying that would be true on every single project, but this is using available data and case studies that we have. This is where we get information on why we would submit that this was not a significant cost addition. And so until we can have public data that's shared with us that we can give to this tag and others, that's what we have to go on. And I also just, again, want to highlight the exceptions that were added to this that are also intended to limit the cost concerns, particularly for small suppliers. And we really welcome additional insights from suppliers or contractors on what helpful thresholds would be to address that cost concern, because projects less than 50,000 square feet, for example, this is on the screen right now, really limits a lot of buildings that would have been included that are more likely to work with small suppliers and small contractors based on the conversations that we've been a part of in this process and in the legislative process that's been recommended or referenced throughout this meeting. And so again, just wanting quantitative suggestions for what is that threshold that addresses that concern from those in the meeting today, because we haven't heard what that threshold would be aside from the ones that are already included in this new update to the language that have been worked on as a result of the biking legislative process that was referenced several times in this meeting. And with that, I think I'll lower my hand. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Megan. Roger, please.
So Todd, I'm this is only my second tag meeting, but what I have not heard is any suggestions of how we can either move forward or modify or turn down. I think those are the three options that the group has. I have my my personal opinion. I mean, I'm looking at RCW item number 4, and we choose materials all the time. Cost is king. There are many other factors, constructability, availability. In my mind, all this proposal is doing is adding one additional item that is considered when you are potentially considering various materials. So I don't think that I don't believe that it creates any advantage. I believe that the code is the perfect spot for it. We have a lot of requirements in the building code about the strength of concrete, the durability of concrete, the strength of steel, the elongation of steel, all of those things are covered in the code. So I don't think having this requirement in the code is a big deal. It is not a stretch at all. I don't believe that this proposal says anything about having to use low carbon concrete. I don't think that it is, all it really is getting to, and what I would love to get to is something in the code that does require EPDs. There has to be a threshold that makes sense. And I think I really like the changes that got inserted, less than 50,000 square feet. I do think not all of the concrete would be a good change. I think only require 75% of the steel. And I looked back, one of the comments was, does it include bolts and everything? And the steel definition does say structural steel. So I think that is pretty well defined. I think you could add structural concrete or something like that to the concrete section. But I would just like us to figure out a path forward. Either we are going to be able to modify this, which I would love to modify this to get it to the point where we can suggest to move this forward. I think some of the enforcement comments that Micah brought up are good questions and comments, and I'm not sure exactly how to resolve those, but I would just like to I know that there are people that are going to support and people that are going to oppose the proposal, no matter what. But what is a proposal, a middle ground proposal that a majority of the tag can support, and then we can move it on to the next phase, and then there will be several additional opportunities for people to provide input. So.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. And so we are running out of time, of course. We have 7 minutes left. So clearly there's going to be some form of continuation. And I want to get to some of the other hands here, but first let's, a couple of thoughts throughout this. First of all, thank you, everyone. This is what we intended to have: more thorough stakeholder engagement, and a couple just individual thoughts here. I personally want more time to go through all the written testimony that's been given. I think if these move forward, the TAG does have a lot more work to do. But one option I believe we have is to get more guidance from the council level, meaning the BFP or council, and staff on some of these questions of what is within the rulemaking authority of the council. Again, this TAG is advisory to that council. And then from that level, within the rulemaking authority granted by the legislature, what are the mandates that these or policy that this fits under, if it does. So one thought I have is, I'm not ready personally to propose that we accept or reject this. I think more public process is justified here. I think the question is it more process right now at the TAG level next week, or do we try to get guidance from the committee level with some level of accountability by the appointed council members? Any thoughts?
I can give you my opinion on that, Todd, as a committee member. I mean, I think what I would love to see is additional. First off, I'm thinking that at the meeting next week, maybe we focus on the IEBC because I think there are some things there that we really do need to look at as well, and we are getting short on time. That gives everybody 2 weeks to kind of come back, and at that stage, I think we need to get to. I agree with you. I'm not ready to nix it or to pass it along as it is. I think it needs to be modified some more. People can come with proposals or suggestions for ways that it is acceptable or not. So,
yeah, that's my thought too. And I would like more guidance on 1927.020, inclusion of other materials. Stoyan.
Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts? When is our next BFP, even if that was the will of this TAG?
Well, the next BFP depends of, whether or not the technical advisory groups will be able to complete their work with the code proposals. I was trying to do it a week before June 17th, but it seems like we won't be able to do that. So for the BFP, what I see is the council meeting is on June 17th. So June 15 or 16 for the BFP standing committee.
Okay. I gave my opinion. I would like to see this, the question on the procedure to move forward to the BFP, so with some guidance then on whether we move deeper into modifications or an up or down vote, a simple up or down vote.
Hey, Todd.
Yes, please.
This is Andrea. I know we have 3 minutes left, so I would like to make a motion that we don't make a decision until we get some sort of legal, based on all of the points that you pointed out, that we get some legal guidance.
Okay. Yeah, I think I support that, and unless anyone's opposed to that, I think that is. I don't think we have to take action necessarily as a TAG. If staff feels comfortable that you've heard this.
Yes.
Questions.
We can coordinate with the Assistant Attorney General, and I think June 8th is a better option for it.
I'm in favor of Roger's suggestion, or how do other TAG members feel if we move to the IEBC proposals on June 1st and then circle back to this on June 8th.
Staff will support that.
Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, let's move forward with that. Bruce, Carey, Matt, we're at time. Can we move your comments to written and then have another opportunity on June 8th? Is there any 10-second blip that has to get out?
Yeah. This is Carrie Sutton with ACI. Just to mention, because a couple of people mentioned the IBC hearings. That testimony for S178, which is Webley, the proposal from MBI, there is a live recording of that. So I would suggest, if you're interested in understanding why there was a 13-0 vote from the structural committee to not approve that, you could just listen to that video and you can hear the testimony and the comments from the committee persons.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I personally am interested in diving deeper on that. Thank you.
No problem. We'll save our comments for the next time. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that, Matt, Bruce. Okay, I think we have a plan. Thank you, everyone. I feel confident we made a step forward. So appreciate everyone's input, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.